On the 15th of February, I took a day off school to join one of a series of nationwide protests calling for more action to be taken to prevent climate change. These are part of a global movement that has been going on since last August, with the next global protest coming up on Friday the 15th of March. The reason this is important now, more than ever, is a report by a global group of leading climate scientists has shown that we only have 12 years to take action to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Warming of even 2 degrees will increase likelihood of extreme weather, increase coastal flooding, cause potential food shortages, and increase the death toll of both humans and animals from climate-related events. For this not to happen, I think it's clear that no one wants this to happen. Global net CO2 emissions must reach zero by 2050, which requires a coordinated effort from governments, companies, and ordinary people, an effort which is still severely underestimated by all three. With all the background out of the way, here are 4 criticisms about these protests that both the media and other young people I know seem to have, and why they don't stand up to facts and logic. Number 1. Protesting is cringy, and it looks stupid. If you use Twitter, you've probably seen a lot recently about various activist groups from across the political spectrum, and most of them seem pretty cringy or just downright weird. Even The Guardian isn't helping the image of these protests. For some reason, they've decided to put what looks like a furry on the headline image as the face of the movement. However, this protest is different to all of the cringe, because the fundamental nature of the issue is different. We've established that climate action needs to be taken as soon as possible to avoid this 2-degree warming, and there isn't time to be sitting there being reluctant to join just because you saw some guy with light green hair from your school going to the last one. The larger the protest that happens, the more attention it gains, and the quicker we see action taken. Number 2. The protest exploits young children. You may have seen in the footage of this protest kids as young as 5 being interviewed, many of whom have no idea what they're really doing. And some people see this as the indoctrination of young kids. If you bring your 5-year-old to a pro or an anti-Brexit rally, there's a chance that later in their life they'll do some reading and they'll suddenly realise they disagree with everything they were told about Brexit as a child. And this could be quite damaging if we don't let young kids form their own opinions. But for this issue, however, you might see a pattern emerging here in a minute. There is no other side worth considering. There's a 97% consensus among scientists that human activity does contribute to global warming, a figure that surveys has shown is underestimated by those with less scientific expertise. This is not an issue like Brexit with cases from both sides that should be considered, because science dictates that there is a right and a wrong side. Therefore, bringing young children to a climate strike is not the same as, say, teaching them that Brexit's good because it will get the French out of our country. And while there's not enough on the national curriculum about man-made climate change, these protests serve an educational purpose too. Number 3. The protest is an excuse to bash the Tories. How to deal with climate change is, unfortunately, a political issue. However, it's not necessarily a partisan issue. Many of the demands are obviously aimed at the Conservatives because they are the ones who are currently just about in power. Another reason this protest comes across as anti-Tory is because the Socialist Worker Party seem to turn up to every single protest with their newspapers and banners, even though most of their representatives are middle-aged men in high-vis jackets. Anyway, it's worth recognising that the Tories have already made some progress. Britain is the first developed economy to commit to examining how it can meet the targets set by the Paris Agreement, and the government are sticking to the aim of reducing CO2 emissions by 80% of the 1990 levels by 2050. However, as always, more can be done. An 80% reduction is not a net reduction to zero. The government still allows fracking to happen despite a report from the UK's Committee on Climate Change stating that large-scale fracking is incompatible with meeting our carbon budget. The national curriculum does not introduce the idea of man-made climate change until secondary school. Whoever you support, there's nothing stopping you from supporting more being done to counteract climate change, and informing the public that this is an urgent issue.
Number 4.
The government won't listen to children. A lot of people are saying that the government won't listen to these protests because no one protesting can actually vote. But these protests are not just like having a quiet word with Theresa May outside Parliament. They get media coverage, they cause disruption to the education sector, and require the government to allocate resources such as police to where the protests are happening. We are letting the government know that if they do nothing, we will keep striking, and people will see the civil unrest that comes out of it and begin to understand why urgent change needs to happen. And this will cost the government and the next government after them if nothing changes. It's also important that the media coverage show people what the problem is. We need to see that when they interview children, they say, "We only have 12 years to make sure our carbon emissions reach net zero by 2050. Otherwise, there could be a global catastrophe with food shortages, extinctions, and hundreds of millions of people becoming climate refugees." What I'm saying overall is that there is no reason to be put off going to a climate protest near you on March the 15th. You don't need to bring a banner or one of those annoying horn things,
Vuvuzela,
or wear a fursuit. Just turn up and show your support. Get your friends to come with you, if you have any. It's a free day off school. And smash like on the video if you actually sat through it. Well done.